from the palatial studios at Emerson College in beautiful downtown Boston. This is the Jeff Santos Show on the Revolution Radio Network. Rebuilding America, together, investing, activism, and supporting the middle class. Now, here's Jeff.
Thank you, Shane, and good afternoon, Americans, and welcome to the Jeff Santos Show. We are live in Studio A on the campus of Emerson College. It is great to be with you today. We got a great show for you today. We'll talk with our regulars, Mark Taylor-Canfield from Seattle, Washington. Of course, the independent journalist will give us the latest on this Washington delegates and whether or not some of the superdelegates, after Bernie blew out Hillary Clinton, will come to their senses and back Senator Sanders as he won 70% to, I believe, 30%. And there is obviously a lot of back and forth going on between superdelegates. There'll be more allocated to get them down to about 210 before we have New York next Tuesday. Obviously, lots to talk about there. Neil Soroka, Communications Director for Democracy for America, will join us at 4:30. We'll get his thoughts on that as well. We'll also talk to our good friend Priscilla from Badass Teachers at 4 o'clock. And, of course, always take your phone calls at 772-925-8206. Email us, jeff@revolutionboston.com, and check us out on both Facebook and Twitter at Jeff Santos Show. A little later on in the program, we'll talk to our good friend, Mr. Craig, Robert Craig of Wisconsin Citizen Action. Big win for Bernie last week, of course, and the Badger State. We'll get the ramifications of that and what happens to those delegates. And, how does Wisconsin play in pushing Sanders or Clinton going forward? So we have, again, lots to talk about. And my hope is that there are a number of people here who are going to be pushing the envelope and taking some time to go to New York and see if they can make a difference in next Tuesday's primary. A lot of polls showing Secretary Clinton ahead by double digits, 12 points, 16 points in one poll. But I have a feeling it's going to be a lot closer than that. The history has been that Senator Sanders has been able to make up when he spends a significant amount of time in the state that he's going for. And I look at Michigan as an example here. He was down double digits in Michigan with very little time, ended up winning by 2 points. Not sure if he can rectify that. It's a little bit different population, obviously a bigger state. But my guess is that this will be very, very close, within 3 or 4 points one way or the other, in my opinion. So that should be a significant comeback if indeed Senator Sanders can, again, replicate what he did in Michigan just a few weeks ago. So I'm interested in getting your thoughts on this. Again, 772-925-8206. Some other big news today. Paul Ryan is set to address more speculation that he would be the guy. Jerry Austin and I talked about this yesterday. We're going to try to break in if we can and get some word. In my opinion, it now opens the door for more people to jump on Donald Trump's back. But that may very well be a disaster for the Republican Party, so I'm not sure if they want to go there. But if Paul Ryan is indeed taking himself out of the running as a possible savior in Cleveland, then it leaves them with Kasich, maybe Mitt Romney. I don't know where they're going to go. But it looks like a disaster waiting to happen in Ohio come the middle of July. All I can tell you is that there, in my opinion, is a major problem for the Republicans. Ryan would be the young, attractive. They could put Haley on the other side of the ticket and try to bamboozle Americans. Now, again, it couldn't happen to a better party. 34 minutes past the hour. It is indeed the Jeff Santos Show that you're tuned into. Another connection to the great city of Seattle. It is the Foo Fighters, of course, the former drummer of Nirvana. That started the whole revolution, which continues on the music scene and in the world of politics as well. Here to talk about it is not only a great musician himself, but a great journalist. Mark Taylor-Canfield joins us on the line. We'll play a little music for him in the next break. Mark, great to have you on the show. Happy Tuesday, sir. How are you?
Great, Jeff. We are going to have to get you out here to Seattle sometime and hang out. It's an interesting town. I'll bet you it's probably changed a lot since you were here, even though it's not been long ago.
Yeah, no, it definitely has changed in 20 years or so, or 15 years, and it is a place I would definitely love to hang out, to have some fun. We got lots to talk about, my friend. You know, the Washington State caucus, and of course there's also a primary, which is obviously very weird. But more and more people are talking about these more delegates coming Sanders' way. That would bring the count down from about, I guess, 230 to 210 or so. What are you hearing about that, and when do they actually get posted?
Well, Washington State has probably the most convoluted and complicated system of anybody in the rest of the country. We're coming up on the legislative district caucuses, which is April 17th. And then we have a county convention on May 1st, on May Day, by the way, so I hope some of the delegates don't mind. If they're anywhere near Capitol Hill, I hope they don't mind the smell of tear gas and pepper spray. But
Jesus. And
then on May 21st is the Congressional District Caucus. Then our state convention isn't until June 18th, so that's when there will be some final decisions made on these. So out of the 17 superdelegates, actually 9 of them have officially endorsed Hillary Clinton, but the rest are considered, sort of shoo-ins for Hillary. So we'll see what's going on. The only thing that I can report to you is that this group here in Seattle called the Impossible is Possible movement is reaching out to the superdelegates, Governor Jay Inslee, Senators Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, and Congressman Jim McDermott's office, as well as some others. So far, the report from Wes Irwin from that group is that the only office that's actually been willing to meet with them and have a conversation is the McDermott office. So the Patty Murray's office and Mary Cantwell's apparently didn't really even want to accept the letters from constituents urging them to switch their votes.
Outrageous.
But
this to me,
going to continue this protest even if they have to hold sit-ins inside these offices. So there you go.
Excellent. Well, this to me is outrageous. Now, here's Patty Murray. I remember, when she was the woman in the tennis shoes or the running shoes or the sneakers, whatever the heck the stupid thing was. And, she was a real progressive. And she really pushed out there. Look, she's now part of the leadership. She's now part of the good old boys and girls network. And, look, it may be time to primary her and to get her out of the way. The same thing with Cantwell, who was corporate to begin with when she won in 94 or 96, whatever it was. And the fact is that these folks have been there too long. Time to go. And, it's a shame because they once were in the quote, particularly Murray. Cantwell was always a corporate Democrat in my view. You live there, you may know better. But to me, if these folks don't even want to meet with Sanders' representation, then that means they don't have the pulse of the Democratic Party. When they go 70-30 for the Democrats, then that to me, for Bernie Sanders that to me shows that the state is in one direction. It's in a progressive direction. And McDermott, who's leaving, understands it because he doesn't have the pressure from the Clinton folks because he's leaving. So that to me is the truth in the pudding right there. These folks are just kowtowing to the Clinton Democratic Party, and that's all they're doing. Your thoughts?
Well, the way I put it to a friend yesterday is that for some reason there is this impression that the superdelegates are somehow superhuman, that they fly around in capes with superpowers, and that they have no obligation to represent the grassroots of the party, and that somehow, their vote was like a commandment from God chiseled in stone given to Moses for Mount Sinai. And the reality is that each one of these superdelegates may have their own interpretation of what their responsibility is. So they do have the option to change their vote if they want to, which has already happened with several superdelegates, one from Vermont and then another the other day. So what you have is a situation where, the media and the Democratic Party officials are interpreting this as some hard, fast 10th commandment or whatever, that thou shalt not change superdelegates endorsements. But in reality, each superdelegate may have a different impression of what their responsibility is. It may not be a rule that they have to switch to what the majority of the party supports in their state, but it's also not against the rule to change that vote. So there you go. It might actually come down to the individual in some of these cases. It's not one of the 10 commandments. It's a personal decision made by these particular people who are human beings, and they are individuals. Regardless of what people think, they don't live in a bat cave somewhere and drive an atomic-powered car. They are just people like everyone else, and have to make the decision as an individual whether they feel that their obligation is to represent the true results of the Washington State caucus, which was 73% for Bernie Sanders. So there you go.
That's right. And here's another thing before I interrupt you, Mark.
What's happening in Washington?
One second, Mark. I don't know if you can hear me.
Because Bernie Sanders
can Mark hear me?
And endorsed these protests in Washington, D.C., saying that he's glad to see people standing up for democracy in the United States. And then right around the same time, he tweeted against Citizens United, saying that, Citizens United has to be overturned if we're to get the big money out of the elections. So the fact that hundreds of people at this point, over 400, and there have already been arrests today, Jeff, the fact that this is going on in Washington, D.C. at the same time that the Bernie Sanders campaign is sweeping the country with its pro-democracy message. And there are also major protests going on across France right now against some of the new labor laws and the extension of the work week. We saw in Iceland the prime minister being forced to resign, and there's been a lot of protests in London demanding that Prime Minister David Cameron resign. Now, those last two situations are the result of some of the revelations in the Panama Papers, but it's just interesting to me to see a presidential candidate come out and support this grassroots movement that's going on in Washington, D.C., too. And
there's no doubt that he is leading. I don't know if you can hear me, Mark, but there's no doubt that he is leading a revolution, as is Bernie Sanders. And whether we're talking about what is happening with Cameron, I got to watch Prime Minister's questions yesterday on C-SPAN, and the opposition leader, who's a great progressive in his own right and labor leader. Of course, what we've seen with democracy spring going on, and this is another case of the continuation around the world. We had the Arab Spring in 2009 and 10. We've had other democracy movements around Europe. And to me, this is a worldwide revolution. And you mentioned the Panama Papers. You have a situation where a lot of people are saying, and have been a lot of written, that this ties to Mr. Podesta, the campaign manager, former chief of staff to both President Obama and to President Clinton. Ties him and his brother, I believe, Tony Podesta, to these Panama Papers. That, to me, could be a real smoking gun if there's more and more evidence. I don't know if you've heard more on that. 772-925-8206. We're coming upon a break here, so we'll hold over, Mark, until then, with our good friend from Seattle, Washington. You can email me, Jeff at revolutionboston.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Jeff Santos Show. You're tuned in to the revolution, the political revolution, on the radio. We're right back. A little music from today from the Pacific Northwest. That's, of course, where our next guest, Mark Taylor-Canfield, is from, and that's the band that you're hearing right now, or he's a part of it. And I love the sound, my friend. You have a lot of energy there.
That was a lot of fun. Some people call that punkabilly, I guess. But yeah, it was a group of musicians that I recorded with, and yeah, I'm in a band here in Seattle. Two bands, one called the Galaxy Machine, which does a sort of electro-funk dance music, and then electronic funk, and then you've got the Rebel Saints, which is a rootsy rock band that I was influenced by a bunch of musicians from New Orleans, some cats from New Orleans who just blew me away with their soulful, funky, bluesy sound. And so I'm trying to bring that kind of sound to Seattle, which is, you know, been known for grunge and punk and recently for a lot of psychedelic art rock bands. That has tended to be the norm in Seattle for a while. But I'm trying to bring people back to their roots. And with people like Charles Bradley from Brooklyn, his artist who's been out here and just blown people away. I think people in Seattle are really interested in roots music right now. So it's going to be a lot of fun, Jeff.
Well, get back to the roots. Let me ask you, as I was trying to do, we had some phone issues. You know, to me, one of the things, and again, I know we don't have any confirmation of this, but there have been a lot of reports that the connections of these Panama Papers to Americans focuses on the Podestas. Now, I know John Podesta. I've met him a number of times, talked to him. And then there's his brother, Tony, who I don't know, who is supposedly the one that's connected. Now, I would tell you, I would think that this would be a problem for the Clinton campaign because of the closeness of ties to both Hillary and Bill Clinton, if indeed there is any truth to them. Again, we don't have any other confirmation on this, but it would seem to me that could potentially be an issue.
Well, it's true that it's the rumors are flying online. A lot of people are talking about this issue, about the potential effect on the U.S. presidential elections of information that could be coming out. It's going to take a while for people to get through a lot of them. But it could have an effect because the situation with Prime Minister David Cameron in the UK is also about a family member. It's not directly related to him, but it still caused people to hold big protests and demand his resignation. And I just look at it like this, Jeff. You know, one of the things I realized about Bernie Sanders is that he kind of represents what's going on online right now and in a lot of independent and alternative media, which is people are just the average citizen out there now, you know, tweeting every day about his campaign. People have their own web shows where, you know, they're 12-year-old kids broadcasting, you know, their own shows. And the whole style seems to be yourself, you know, a DIY situation where you don't need, you know, $100 makeup and, you know, $300 haircuts to do this. You just need to be yourself and be honest. And that's what Bernie Sanders seems to represent right now. So this revolution in the Democratic Party represents this I'm just me kind of attitude, that it's okay to be an average person and not have these huge financial and political connections. That's true for a lot of live streamers and a lot of citizen journalists now. And I think Bernie Sanders represents that idea. He is an authentic person. He doesn't try to be somebody he's not. He presents himself as he is. And the more he holds these historic events, like the one with the Apollo, and makes these very brash and straightforward statements about Citizens United and about the legalization of marijuana, I think he's really going to resonate with people. And so if something does come out of the Panama Papers that implicates anybody associated with the Clintons, I think it's just going to add to this perception that they are a part of a international corporate elite, whereas Bernie Sanders represents the average guy. So in that way, yeah, it could really affect the outcome of the election. But anything could happen. You know, we didn't expect this leak to happen to begin with. What could happen even within the next few hours? We don't know.
No doubt about that. Let me get your thoughts on another issue that I think people are focused on, and that is the Republicans. And I know that Republicans don't do very well in Washington State. After all, you got a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature, even though the numbers are small. And you have 2 senators, although we've talked about their corporatization of them. Ryan today pulled himself out. Does at all anybody in the Pacific Northwest, and I know you're in Seattle, and Oregon votes differently, as does California, but it's as you say, and it's true, it's the most progressive side of America. Bernie Sanders has said that. This to me would be, whoever the Republicans would try to put up, I don't think they're going to get 10 votes. I mean, obviously they're going to get in the thousands, but I think that they are sort of persona non grata on that part of the country. Again, you spend a lot of time not only in Seattle but all parts of Washington, down in Oregon. I would say that the Republican Party is kind of useless in about 4 or 5 states that encompass the Pacific part of this country: California, Washington, Hawaii, Oregon. It doesn't seem to play there, and why is that in your mind?
Well, we shouldn't underestimate the Republicans, though, in Washington State, because they do have a very small majority in the Senate, which has blocked a lot of education funding, partially leading to the situation where our state Supreme Court is fining the state legislature $100,000 a day for failing to adequately fund K through 12 education. We also have a lot of Republicans on the east side of the state, and the elections between Dino Rossi with the Republican Party and Christine Gregoire for the governor's office with the Democrats were some of the closest elections for governor in the history of the country, with multiple recounts that went on for months. So one of the arguments here from some of the folks who are in the Change the Superdelegates movement is that if Governor Jay Inslee ends up voting for Hillary Clinton, endorsing Hillary Clinton as a superdelegate, it could lead to some opposition within the Democratic Party amongst the Bernie Sanders supporters.
Again, the phone number to join us is 772-925-8206, 772-925-8206. We're talking with Mark Taylor-Canfield. We'll try to get him back here in the final minute and a half of the show, of the segment. But if we can't, we will obviously talk to Mark next Tuesday. One of the interesting things about Washington State to me is that they are moving the agenda, and they are moving the agenda forward on the progressive issues. And $15 minimum wage coming out of SeaTac and then the city of Seattle. You have a number of other issues that have come into play from Seattle. And that, to me, is a great example of where we are in this country. Moving forward, and whether it's Washington State or California or Oregon leading us, and that is where the most progressive side. Look, I would love to be, as a person from New England and who has lived in the Northeast, a good part of my life. But I believe the Pacific Northwest and California, particularly Northern California, is where it's at. We're right back. It's the Jeff Santos Show. Back in a flash. There's no doubt we need 2 parties. We actually need 3 or 4, come to think of it. But look, if they're going to play these games, it's going to be fascinating to see what they end up with, and maybe what we all thought. And I was thinking this way just a couple of months ago until Trump decided to just anger everybody, women, minorities, Latinos, African Americans, on and on and on, and started having people in his audience punch people out, sucker punch them. His campaign manager is pulling somebody's arm out of their socket, being a bodyguard and campaign manager. So it would seem to me that we are at a point right now where I feel that there is a real frustration with a lot of Republican moderates, however many left are there, with their current status. So it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with, if anything. Maybe they just say, all right, we're just going to lose with Cruz, or we're going to stumble with Trump, and then that's the end of it. And then we'll rebuild from there. The problem is that they have built the Trumps and Cruzes of the world. Their 2010 Tea Party came in with the destruction. They may have had some people who had really good ideas, but the implementation was just to block Obama, was not to create more jobs, was not to create a better healthcare system. It's just to block it, to give more money to their Wall Street pimp masters. And that's all they've done. They haven't done anything for the working class, the middle class of this country. Many of them, not all, want to spend more money overseas. We have so many issues in this country. And I was kind of frustrated this morning, not because I don't think his heart's in the right place, but really, as many of you know who have watched and listened to me over the years, I'm a huge U2 fan. I think they're the greatest band in the world. But Bono came on today talking about the issue of extremism and national security. And I think, and it testified today apparently before Congress, he did a great job on bringing Bush along on the issue of AIDS. But America needs to focus on America. Now, we can do two things at once, and we can work with our friends in Europe to try to end the issue of ISIS. But it's going to be Muslim countries that are going to have to do that. We can support aid. We can support economic development in these countries to avoid poverty and bad conditions which lead to terrorism and groups like ISIS and others going in. But really, Bono, I think that, America needs to focus on America. And I know you're not saying that they shouldn't, but I think we have a lot more to do than focus on international issues. Again, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, but I think the major focus is on what this country has to do. Because if you continue to have the 1%, or we'll say the top 5%, making all the decisions, having all the good jobs, and then everyone else is working for the man, and the man could care less about how many hours you're working, whether you have health care or not, whether or not there's going to be education provided for you. None of these things are going to be done just because we're going to try to save the world. And again, it's hard for me to say because I've interviewed Bono years ago. I think he's a fantastic musician, singer, artist, and I think he really cares about the world. What he's done for AIDS, what he's done in Africa and AIDS around the world, what he's done for the issues. He was out there years ago for Greenpeace. He's concerned about the environment and other issues. Concerned, obviously, about Northern Ireland. Sunday, Bloody Sunday, it's what it was all about. But I really believe that, and maybe, he's not an American, but it's not the time, Bono, during the middle of the campaign season, to start bringing this issue up when we have so many issues in this country that need to be taken care of. 772-925-8206, the phone number to join us. My feeling here, folks, is that we are at a point in this country where we have so many issues. And if Bernie Sanders doesn't get elected, then we're just going to punt down the next 4 years. If Hillary Clinton gets the nomination and wins the presidency, not much will change because President Obama now is a centrist Democrat. She'll be more hawkish on foreign policy. TPP deals and Wall Street deals will continue to go through. If the Republicans somehow miraculously can win, presumably steal the election, it'll only get worse. So as we've said many weeks and many months ago, the only way for this country, and Bernie Sanders repeats it every day, some people will say ad nauseum, but you need a political revolution. And to be precise, that political revolution is meaning people have to get off their butts and they got to get involved. And that doesn't mean just 18 and 25-year-olds. That means 35 and 45 and 55-year-olds have to care about their community. Don't think about it just as voting. Don't think about it just as a way to, do something when you're not spending time with your kids or your wife or husband. Think about it as the community. You start thinking about we and less about I or us, then we'll be in better shape. It's the Jeff Santos Show. Back in a flash. Live here on the Jeff Santos Show. We're going to try to go live to Paul Ryan in Washington, D.C. in a matter of seconds here. He is about to address the media on the issue of whether or not he will be a candidate for president. Let's go live to Washington, D.C. Okay. We're going to try to do that. Phone number to join us, 772-925-8206. And let's go live to Paul Ryan right now.
As chairman of the Republican Convention, my job is to ensure that there is integrity in the process, that the rules are followed by the rule book. That means it is not my job to tell delegates what they should do. But I've got a message to relay today. We have too much work to do in the House to allow this speculation to swirl or to have my motivations questioned. So let me be clear. I do not want, nor will I accept the nomination for our party. So let me speak directly to the delegates on this. If no candidate has a majority on the first ballot, I believe that you should only choose from a person who has actually participated in the primary. Count me out. I simply believe that if you want to be the nominee for our party, to be the president, you should actually run for it. I chose not to do this. Therefore, I should not be considered, period, end of story. I just think it would be wrong to go any other way. So let me say again, I am not going to be our party's nominee. But I'll also be clear about something else. Not running does not mean I'm going to disappear. When I accepted this speakership, I did so on the condition that I would do things differently than they had been done in the past. For one, I made it clear that this would be a policy and communications-focused speakership. And secondly, I made clear last year in 2015, before the primaries even started, that we would be putting together a policy agenda and offer a clear choice to the American people. That's what I told my colleagues I would do, and that is exactly what I have been doing. Look, there is a big debate going on right now. It's about what kind of country we're going to be. As Speaker of the House.
All right, well, you saying that he's not going to accept the nomination of this of the Republican Party and that he's going to concentrate on his duties as Speaker of the House. That leaves us now wondering what's going to end up happening to him and what's going to happen to the Republican Party, that is. But let's hear from you on this issue, 772-925-8206. Let's talk to our good friend Rudy to start us off, as normal. Rudy, Paul Ryan not running. I guess the Republicans have to find somebody else. Maybe they'll go to Rauner.
Well, why would he want to? Because, Speaker of the House has just about as much power as the President. In fact, maybe more. Controlling the purse strings.
Some ways, sure.
So,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but, Bernie Sanders isn't president. Nothing will change. Wall Street has it both ways. A Republican president or a corporate Democrat as president. And it's been like that for too long. And with Barack Obama saying it takes a while to move this big ocean liner of America around to get it in the right place. Well, let me tell you something. If Bernie is president, the Bernie tugboats will be out there turning this country in the right direction almost overnight. Because he's experienced more than that other person who says she's experienced. he'll do it in no time. And
well, he's experienced and he has cojones, which the other side does. The other side does not, and the Democratic favorite, quote unquote, does not as well. Nobody's going to take on Wall Street. Nobody's going to take on the Washington establishment unless it's Bernie Sanders. He's the only one. Otherwise, things remain the same.
Yeah, he's the only one. I've said this several times already, and I believed it from the beginning. Before he announced for president, I believed in him as a senator, and he's the only one standing in the way of a lot of Democrats that wanted to change Social Security for the worse. And there's a couple of races. Chris Holland, he's being challenged because of his position on Social Security, taking the president's side and cutting it back. And the same thing is a race in Florida between Alan Grayson and Murphy. Murphy wanted to almost privatize Social Security. So,
and on top of that, get rid of Elizabeth Warren's consumer agency on top of that. So,
yes,
two issues that Mr. Murphy. And, of course, right there with W. Washington Schultz on top of it, who's our head of the party.
But it was good to see Bernie Sanders at the Apollo Theater with Harry Belafonte on the stage. There was one venue that held 4,000. He filled it. There were 6,000. So he went outside and talked to the 2,000 after he talked to the 4,000. So
there you go.
Bernie,
how about that?
He's hitting all the right notes. Yeah, he's hitting all the right notes in New York. And don't be surprised, Republicans and corporate Democrats, if he wins New York. Don't be surprised, because he's got what it takes to do it.
No doubt about that, and he's done it before. We've seen what happened in Michigan. Nobody thought he could pull it off, and they did. And I get a feeling it's going to be a squeaker in New York. We'll find out. Rudy, thank you for the call, my friend. We're right back. Mark Taylor-Canfield up next.